Hello, I'm Rick Stivers of YoungMartin'sReels. Today we're looking at this Daiwa EMCAST Plus 6000 reel, and this reel is broken. All right, and what's happened is this end piece on this bail has broken off. And what I'm going to try to do, the way this was made, let's see if I can zoom in on it. All right, the way this was made, they had taken the bail wire itself and they had cut a groove into the end of it. This bail wire was about this long. And they cut a groove into the inside of it, or on the outside of it, and that slipped this piece down inside, and then they drove a aluminum pin with a V on the end of it, is what it appears, that split around that and it locked it into place. And you can see it on the other side. They did a very similar thing on this side over here. Okay, well, I was able to drill out this side of it and get the old broken piece out of there, but I don't have an aluminum peg to put in there. What I'm going to try to do instead, a lot of reels are built with a piece where it comes down and makes a hook shape to the left, to the inside, and locks it in place. Well, that's what I'm going to try to do, is try to hook it into this piece right here. And just a little hook on the end, so that once it's clamped into place, it won't be able to pop back off, and it will lock the bail in place. I don't know if it's going to be successful or not. So we're going to try it. My original goal was to go through and drill out that pin and put a locking pin in there, or a lock set screw, and I was totally unsuccessful at that. I was not able to find a tap the size of the set screws. I did manage to find set screws that I think would have worked, but I couldn't find a good tap for it locally here. And so I'm going to try to use this method and see what we can come up with. If I can get it to where it can't pop out, it should take care of the problem altogether. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to try to do is try to straighten this on this end. And I'm going to use my little kitchen torch for this procedure. And I got a feeling it's going to get pretty hot. And I want to heat this up on this end, and I want to try to straighten the bend out that it has right there. Wow, this is going to be tough to bend. It's tough stuff. Okay, they got most of that bend out. Now I'm going to try to heat up red hot the very end of it and try to put just a little hook on the end of it. I believe that may be enough to get the job done, but it's not. And again, I am stymied. So let's see if I can get it to be more of a bend. Okay, again, I don't think this is good enough. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go down and clamp this in my vise in the garage and see if I can make it more of a 90-degree. I just need a real sharp hook, not this big, long, wide hook that I'm getting. So I'm going to try heating this up and with it in the vise and see if I can tap that down and make it a real sharp hook, and then trim just the end of it off. And I'll be back with you in a few minutes. All right, a little bit of time on the vise and a hammer, and I managed to get the proper shape, I believe, for what I'm going to need down this bail. And it's still a little too long in the hook. Okay, so I don't think it's going to make the turn right there. It needs to be able to turn into that hole. Oh, there you go. It did turn into the hole. But if you look at it right now, so you got that sharp piece sticking out. All right, with that sticking out like that, it can catch on string, line, and everything else. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to shorten that. And you could do it with a file. I'm going to cheat. I'm going to use my Dremel tool. Okay, my cutoff wheel seems to be missing at the moment, so I'm going to be using this grinder on my Dremel tool instead. And let's get this thing going and see if we can get it cleaned up. All right, that looks like it should be sufficient. Let's find out. Don't really want to take too much off. No, it's still barely sticking out of there. And just for future reference, don't put your finger on that, it's hot. Okay, let's take a little more off. All right, now what I've decided I'm gonna do is, this still fits a little loose in there. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna fill this chamber right here with JB Weld. And I'm gonna put this part inside there and mount it on the reel and let it sit until it cures up. And that should lock this in place so that it can't move. And with it locked in place so it can't move, it should take the stress off of it. If you leave it where it will wobble like that, eventually it's going to end up breaking this housing. But if we lock it with the JB Weld so that it can't move, that should prevent that. All right. All right, I'm going to put equal amounts of the JB Weld on here and mix them up. And to get a good cure on JB Weld, takes right at 24 hours. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to put it on and leave it for 24 hours. And when you see the video, for you guys, that will be almost instantaneous. For me, I'll have to patiently wait until tomorrow, come back in and finish. Actually, it's going to be the next day because I'm going fishing tomorrow. All right, take this out. And the good thing about the JB Weld is I can actually sand it down when I'm done. Any that's left over can be cleaned off of this. Okay, stick this in there, bring it over to the side, and then take off that big excess glob. And let's see about putting this back on the reel. Okay, we're going to start off on this side because it's going to be easier to do that. Let's get this out of the way so we don't end up with it all over everything. We're going to go to here. All right, on this side, you will see that there is the spring, and I will take all this apart later and show you guys how it's properly installed. But for now, we're just going to put it on here to get it in the right configuration. There we go. That's got the spring loaded. Put the screw back in. All right, we're going to go to this side now and not touch the JB Weld if possible. Now there's some tension on this bail that I will take care of after the JB Weld has cured. All right. Now what I'm going to do is, you see all this excess JB weld on here. Okay. That's not going to be attractive if we leave it that way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove as much as the excess JB weld that's sticking out as I can, so that we leave just the JB weld that's down inside this assembly. And we're going to use one more. And you don't want to use any kind of solvent or anything, because it might affect the tensile strength of the JB weld itself when it cures. There. Okay. That's all nice and clean in there. And that should lock in place. And as long as I don't move it anymore, that should look pretty good, and it should look locked into just that position when all is said and done. Now what I'm going to do, once we're done, is I'm going to unscrew this back off of here and realign the spring, the bail spring, because it's out of whack right now and it needs to be tilted. Remember, we had to take almost a 1/2 inch off of this because it was broken on the end, and then we had to add a bend in it and then trim off the end of the bend. So we removed almost a 1/2 inch of the length of this bail spring. So that's going to throw the balance just slightly off, and it's definitely going to throw the tension on the bail spring off. And so we're going to have to come back and work on that. But for now, I will see you when I get back to working on this. All right, it's 36 hours later, and we're back on the bench, and the bail has been repaired, and it is very solid now. There's no wobble, no wiggle, nothing, and it works perfectly now. So we're going to get started taking this thing apart. What we're going to do, let's go ahead and take off the spool first. Okay, now this reel is a lot different than most I've ever worked on. And here's what we've got to do. First off, the screws in the side, you've got 2 screws visible, one here and one here. But then if you look, the side plate goes up underneath the rotor. So there are more, probably more screws up underneath the bump guard down here. So we're going to have to take that off. We're probably going to have to take this off in order to get this side case off. But first off, let's start off with this front. We're going to start off taking off the clicker cog for the drag. Then we're going to lift this assembly out. And I, for the life of me, don't understand why this is made this way. It just seems like an overly complex piece to add in here. This piece fits down into these slots on each side here, and it rides up and down, and as it rides up and down, it moves the spool up and down. But it seems the spool could have just sat directly on the shaft. Maybe this gives it a little stability. I'm not real sure what they were thinking on that. All right, so we've got that done. And we've got one more washer here, which I think we'll have to take off as well. And let's see if we can get hold of it. There we go. It's got that washer off. And then we've got a screw down inside here. There's a screw right down in here, which we've got to take out. That's the locking screw that's going to hold this nut in place. And then the difficult part of this is going to be finding a deep enough socket to get down inside there to take this nut off. Now let me get my deep wells and see if I've got one that will do the job. All right, now I found a deep well that's the right size to fit the nut. That's going to be a 16 millimeter, and it goes in and fits, but if you notice, there's not enough room to put the ratchet on it. So I had to improvise. What I'm going to do is use a pair of vice grips, grab hold of the socket, and use that to turn it. Okay. Let's see. Yes, it loosens in a counterclockwise direction. Once I broke it loose, it'll come off easily with just a socket. Now it's going to be a little bit sketchy putting it back in there, getting that on. Oh, and it's got a spring under it. So it's spring loaded to boot. And it's got a wonky locking washer. This is interesting. Okay, this locking washer fits in here like so, and then that screw tightened down. It tightened down onto the washer itself to hold the washer like so. Okay, so let's keep all that together. Now, sitting in right directly under that is a spring, and I'm not sure what the purpose behind the spring is going to be yet. And there's a washer. It looks like a bearing shield. Okay, thin washer. All right. Now that's got us down to here. Now does that mean that we can get this the rest of the way apart? Well, it turns out I looked at this incorrectly. This did not actually fit up underneath the shield like I thought it did. It fits right up against it, and it just looked like it fit under it. So let's go ahead and let's take off the side plate. Well, before we do that, let's go ahead and take the handle off. And the handle will slide out. Now we're ready to take off the bump guard screw. There's the bump guard. All right, what do we have here now? Well, this gets more interesting all the time. All right, we've got a shield here. This shield may actually have a piece that fits up under here. Then again, that's okay. This lifts out here. We're not going to be able to get this one off without taking out this screw and this handle on the anti-reverse. Okay, now let's see if we can take this off. I still don't think it's going to be able to come off because I believe there's probably a bayonet that fits down into here and goes into this, under this screw. So let's go ahead and take this screw out. Okay, that screw out. Let's go ahead and take this screw out. This one, folks, I'm having to figure out as I go along. They have kind of put this together in an odd, I don't want you into it fashion. Okay, I got to be careful on this end because I don't want to break this. Let's see if I can, oh, there it is. Look up inside here. There's a screw hole up inside this handle that's holding that bump guard, the secondary bump guard, in place. Okay, now that'll come out. I'm going to go ahead and put this screw back into the bump guard so we know that that's one fits there. Now that exposes this screw and this screw, and we should be able to take those on out. And so far, these two screws that I've taken out already, these two up here are larger. I believe these two here are smaller. So we're going to change down a size on screwdrivers. Definitely a smaller screw. Now this is a reel that Ken really wanted us to put back into operation. It had the broken bail. It had all kinds of little issues with it. But he really liked the reel and he really wanted me to do the best I could to see if I could get it up and running again. I kept telling him I didn't think I could find a bail, and he was like, we've got to do something. I really want this one to be up and running. So we are going to make our best attempt at it. Man, that does not want to come open. Right there. There we go. There we go. All right. Side cover comes off. It's got old grease in it. But, and that appears to be a bearing. It is a bearing. Okay, we'll clean it up, scrub it, oil it. All right, let's see if our main gear will be able to come out, and it will, but it wants to come out with its bearing. And there we go, got it off. All right, now, when this come out, if you look, you will see a spring right here. This is your anti-reverse spring. And it's going to go into that little hole right there on the anti-reverse gear. I believe it might actually go into the slot. But I think it's going to be going in the hole. And what you do is you line that up with this hole in the gear so that when you go to put it back in, you can see down through it and put it back into place. So let's get this bearing out. Okay, I'll take this bearing out. I'm going to put these two into soak, if I can get it out. There we go. These two roller bearings, I'm going to put into soak and see if we can get some of the old grease off of it. If we can get this oiled instead of greased up, I think it's going to turn a lot smoother, but I'm afraid that those are sealed bearings and there might not be anything we can do with it. They appear to be sealed rather than shielded bearings. So let's see where we can go from here. See, inspect our main gear, see what kind of condition it's in. It appears to be in excellent condition, so that's fine. Let's get back to this. All right, we have, where did our little knob go that controls our here it is. This little knob here controls our anti-reverse, putting it on and off. There we go. Okay, we want this to where it's in the unlocked position, which it is now. It goes like this, it locks. See there? All right, we're gonna go here, put it in the unlocked position. There we go. Now, I'm gonna go ahead and take off this anti-reverse. It's an instant anti-reverse. Got 3 screws holding it in, or so far. All right, there's a wash. There's another bearing, another sealed bearing. Okay, we're going to oil these sealed bearings, although it's probably not going to do them much good. But we are going to take and clean the old grease off of them and oil them. Okay, there's a spacer that goes in the front, and there's the bearing. And that bearing is turning beautifully, so he's going to be fine. But we're going to oil it just to see if we can get some oil down in there. Then underneath the bearing, there's this spacer washer here with a Teflon ring. Now the Teflon's going to go to the inside, like so. And then it's got this retainer ring here that holds the bearing itself, or the anti-reverse itself. And this is where things are going to get hairy. I'm a little leery about pulling the anti-reverse out, but I think we need it out in order to clean. Okay. Now it's coming out, but also I have found that there's a washer laying inside here. I don't know where it goes, and it's just laying up inside here. Can you see it right there? See that little washer? You'll have to see if we can find where that belongs, if it even belongs in here. Uh-oh, don't let this gun come. This is one of those that you don't want to fall apart because it's got all kinds of little roller bearings in it. Okay, it also has a bearing back behind there. Okay, that's a tricky little guy there. We don't want to mess with that one anymore than we have to. All right, now, if you look, this one does not have your typical crosswind block in it. It has a worm gear that it uses in place of a crosswind block. And we're going to clean that in location. We're not going to take that out of there, as I'm afraid that we might be starting to get beyond the abilities of mine to get it all back together if we get too far down the road. And since this isn't my reel, I really do want to be able to put it back together. But it is a much better quality than most of the reels that I've messed with before. Okay, let's see if we can get this to rotate like so. There we go. Now normally worm gears I oil and do not grease, because normally worm gears are outside of a reel, but this one is inside the reel. So I believe I'm going to oil or grease this one. I'm going to spin this around a few times, rotate it so I can see all sides of the gear. I want to get the whole thing clean. Now it's time to see if we can put this back together. And I'm going to try to remember how everything went. First thing we want to do is go ahead and lubricate the worm gear down in here. And like I said, normally on worm gears I use oil, but since this one is contained inside here, I'm going to go ahead and grease it. Because it's got sealed bearings and everything else in it, so that should keep it from getting dirt impacted into that. And it was greased to begin with, so that all those things being the case, that's the way we're going to do it. All right. If for some reason you felt it was absolutely necessary to take that worm gear out of there, you'd have to pop a C-clip off of this end of it over here, and then you would have to remove this screw over here in order to slide that worm gear out. So if you had to replace it, say, that's how you would go about doing it. We don't have to do that. We're not going to touch that. All right, we're going to now put this pinion gear back in. We're going to grease the teeth on the pinion gear. I really didn't want to take this anti-reverse off, so I left it in place, and what I'm going to do is just put some oil down inside on this bearing. It's a sealed bearing, so it really shouldn't need any lubrication. I checked all the other bearings and they were fine. So let's see if we can put this one back. I did not find a location for this washer. I don't know where that washer came from. I don't see a place where it would belong, so we're going to leave that out. I think it somehow just got in there and didn't belong. All right, we're going to slide this back in. It's all the way down. We've got to get it, there you go. You got to get that gear meshed up with that gear, and then it should all slide back in. All right, next should come this washer on with the Teflon piece. Teflon goes facing in. Slide it down. And we're going to go ahead and set this guy in place. And it's got pins to lock it into where it belongs. And you should still have 3 open holes for the screws. Then we're going to put this bearing in. And again, I checked it. It's well lubed. It's a sealed bearing. I'm going to go ahead and throw some oil on here just in case some can seep in there. I'd much rather have some oil sitting there to seep in than let some water get into it later. All right, now we've got this shim washer up inside here. And we're going to flip this over and drop it down onto here. And if the shim washer wants to do that, that's fine. Let it go ahead. Slide into place. And let's slide this locking plate down over top of all of this, and it should line up with those 3 holes there. You just heard it snap into place. These are the 3 screws here that go to hold it in place. All right, now should rotate both ways, and it does. Now we should be able to flip this here, and now it should only go one way, like that. Okay, let's go ahead and reverse it back. Now you've got the instant anti-reverse here, but this is a secondary anti-reverse here that catches on these teeth right here. And so this thing's got a dual anti-reverse in it. Okay, the next thing we're going to want to do is get one of these bearings and get it back down inside here. There we go. Okay. With that done, it's time for your main gear. We're going to grease up the teeth on the main gear. Okay, on the back side of this, there is a shim washer, and I made sure to glue it back with grease to make sure that it didn't slide off. And now remember, we've got this spring. We've got to get that spring to go. We're going to bring it around to this hole in the gear right there so that we can look down through there. And you're probably not going to be able to see it, but we're going to drop this back in, and we're going to get that spring to go into that hole in the anti-reverse lever. And it did. It went right in. Okay, we're going to flip the switch now, so this will rotate both directions. Okay. And that is operating as it should. We're going to go ahead now and put on this bearing. We'll go ahead one last time and give it some oil, although I don't believe it needs it because like I said, it's a sealed bearing. Now, why are they using sealed bearings in this? Well, this is a saltwater reel. It's made to go out and fish in the saltwater, and they don't want saltwater to get inside here. And either this has not been used in saltwater, or it's done a really good job of sealing itself up and not allowing the saltwater in, because there's no corrosion inside this reel at all. Okay, we're going to put the side case cover on. Got to get it to fit into that bearing. And it may be easier to do it this way. Let's go ahead and pop the bearing in first. There. It's a snug fit. And then get it to go. There we go. That worked better. Had a feeling it would. All right, now remember, the 2 big screws went here and here, or to here and here, and then 2 small screws went here and here. All right, I'm going to pause for a moment and go take a look and see if I can find a schematic for this. I'd really like to find out if I can find where this washer went to. All right, I've been looking at the schematic, and that washer was in this area right here. And there's just no washer in the schematic anywhere that fits that bill. There are some washers in here that are like bearing washers that are large, but nothing small like that one. The only place it could have possibly been is under the head of that screw, and it's actually too small to be there. So I don't know if in the factory that washer just fell into there or where in the world it came from. But it was definitely inside there when I took this apart. And it was up underneath here. So I don't know. So we're not going to worry too much about it anymore. The schematic doesn't show one in that area. So we're going to proceed on. All right, we've got that together. Now we're going to put this bump plate back on. It's going to slide in here. Oh, remember I slipped this on. I'll slip that back off. Slide this back in, like so. And now this screw will drop back down in this hole and screw into there, holding that bump guard on. Okay. Then this bump guard goes on. And that didn't fit right. Ah, that's got to go up under there. Okay. It's actually broken. But there we go. Now it fits under correctly. Yeah, make sure, don't put it in this way because it won't go. It has to go this way with that nose in so I can slide up under there as you're coming on. There. And now it gets one screw in there. And I've got to figure out which of these two goes in there. It's going to be this one, because it's screwing into the plastic. This one over here on this knob is going to be screwing into that metal, so it's going to be the machine thread. Like that. And we'll put that screw back in there. Okay. All right. And I guess that this spring just helps that worm gear be able to move slightly without binding. That's kind of interesting, though. I've never seen anything like that. Okay, this washer goes down on this side. Up against the bearing. And then comes our rotor. We're going to pause at this moment and go back to our bail here. And since I've told you guys before, I always try to redo the bails. Once I glued this in place and got everything set, it no longer seems to be sprung. It's pretty much right where it belongs, except it's a little bit that direction. There we go. And that holds it pretty much in place. Once you sit it on there, I'm only out that far. That's not bad. Okay, so we're going to set that over to the side. We're going to come back, and we're going to take this off and see if there's any dirt in here that needs to be cleaned out. And there's not. That's nice and clean inside. So we'll set that right back in place. There's nothing under there. All right, we're going to go to this side now. And we're going to take this apart up here just so that we can clean and lubricate. Well, maybe we're not. Remember, don't break something just so you can try to fix it. That screw is not going to want to come out. That being the case, what we're going to do is we're going to oil that roller where it sits and make sure that it's rolling, and it is. If you look, so let's get you on focus so you can see that it is rolling. Okay, if you look, you'll see that it is actually rolling. Okay, and we'll take it apart down here and make sure that this is clean, because I know it's not clean. We did not clean it when we put it together yesterday, or day 4 yesterday. Yeah, it was day 4 yesterday. Okay, all right, we've got some old grease in here. We're going to take that apart, clean it, and then reassemble it. And you got to be careful, because this is spring loaded and it can shoot. So be careful when you take it out of here. Let's see here. Okay. Take that out. We don't need that today. Okay. We're going to take this off. We're going to take the spring off. And we're just going to wipe them off. And I believe that that has a bend in it that's not supposed to be there. But I'm not going to second guess things too much and try to take the bend out when it's possible, because it's working the way it is. If I take the bend out, it may stop working. So if yours does not have that bend, don't worry about it. It's probably fine. But I just believe that that's not supposed to be bent like that. Okay, inside here, it's clean. Right here, we want to oil this so that it can pivot for many years to come. Let's put some under there, like so. All right. We're going to put a light coating of grease on the shaft for the spring, and then we're going to slide the spring on. And now why not just add a little more grease to it. There we go. Slide all that back into there. And now there's a post on the bottom of this plastic piece. That post has to fit into that hole right there. So what we're going to do is we're going to get that into that hole, like so. Then we're going to bring that down, lock it into place, and then let it go. And that should hold right there until we're ready to put the next part on, which is the bail. Now this bail's got a lot of old dirt and grease on here. We're going to spray it down real quick and clean it. All right, we're ready now to sit this back. Now, this post that the spring fits over, that post is going to fit into this hole right here. Then this post in the center has to go in this center hole on here, and this post that's sticking down has to go into this side slot over here. So we got to get all that mated up at one time. So I'll line them all up. Most important one being that hole with the spring post. There you go. Once you get it lined up, it should fit right in there just fine. Set the screw back in place. Tighten it down. Now your first inclination is going to be to flip this bail back and forth and make sure it works. But before you do that, go ahead and put this piece back on so that spring can't pop out and go flying. Okay, now you can flip that and it's fine. All right. Come Come back. All right, now see that we're a little out on our bed, but it's just that we've moved it a little bit. It's not bent out of shape. It's just pivoting right here on this piece. So I'll move it back to where it belongs. Set it down into place. Lift it just slightly. If you don't lift it when you put it back on, it's going to bind right there. I did that when I had this thing apart yesterday or day before yesterday, and it wanted to bind. So just make sure you lift it up just a little bit to make sure that that post right there falls into the slot inside here. Once you got it in there, you're good. Let's go ahead, put the screw in. All right. Now, let's go back, oil the screw head, because it has to pivot on that screw head. Oil the slide here, oil the slide on this side, and oil the screw head. Work it back and forth a few times. And there you have it. It's ready to go back together. So let's take this. Now, when you go to set this in place, make sure your spring hasn't fallen off. So you still got our spring in there. And if you look, this nut has got a great big open side, but it's got that piece that's going to allow that to slide through, but yet the spring is going to fit up inside there. Okay? Now this has got to fit in here. It's got two flat spots in here. See the flats? One here and one here. They have to line up with the flat spots on the pinion gear. If you don't get them lined up, it's not going to go back together. Like that. Okay. Next, we're going to drop this locking ring back down inside there. And that one's going to be a little bit tricky. We've got to make sure that we get it into the right position inside there. When we put that nut on, that nut's got to go down into it. Okay. Matter of fact, okay, let's do that. Don't lose the spring. Don't put this locking plate in there yet. Take the nut, drop the nut in first, and let's go ahead, take our socket, let's get that nut screwed on there. Which may be easier said than done, getting it started, because you can't get your fingers down in there to it. Come on. Oh, that spring is holding it up, keeping it from going down to get started. So that's going to make it a little bit more complicated. There we go. I think that might have caught. Let's see if it'll go on. It did not. Let's see here. What's going to be the best way to do this? We've got to hold down on the nut while we screw it in and get it started. Okay, that worked. Okay, I just grabbed hold of it with my hemostat. You could use needle nose just as well, and hold it down while you turn it, and it locked on. Okay, then we'll screw this down. And then I'm going to clamp back onto it with my vice grip, since I can't put my ratchet on it. And just get it a little snug, just nice and snug. Now, put your retaining ring on, and it should drop down over the nut. Okay, once you've got that in there, then you've got that locking screw that you've got to get back in. And if you can't get it to hold on your screwdriver, add just a little bit of grease. But this one looks like it's gonna do just fine. Okay, and I can see the hole right there. And we're gonna put the screw into the hole like so, and tighten the screw down. It's almost like they wanted to make this thing overly complicated to keep people from working on it. Okay. That's smooth. Okay, next we're going to put this assembly on. Now this thing, when you first glance at it, almost appears to be symmetrical, but it's not. Let me wipe it off. It is not symmetrical. If you try to put it in the wrong way, I'm going to show you what's going to happen. Let's try to put it in the wrong way first. Okay, when you try to put these slots in, oh, that's the right way. When you put it in the wrong way, it's not going to fit. You can't get it to fit over the center and have these posts go into the slots here. So you have to, there's only one way it will fit. That's like this. All right, that slides down. Then goes that washer. Oh, I'm sorry. Stand by. I messed you up. The washer goes first, because that's the lift point for this assembly. Okay, so the washer goes first, then this fits in, because that washer is what grabs hold of this and lifts it up to lift the spool up. Next goes your drag clicker and your spacer for setting your spool height. And that brings us to the spool. Now, in order to finish up with the spool, we're going to have to pop out this clip, and it's spring-loaded, so be careful with it. Okay, we're going to take that clip out, and I'm going to use this to lift the drag washers out. Okay, first we have a keyed washer. These are felt. You don't see felt in saltwater reels very often. Okay, then comes the eared washer with felt washers, and somebody has greased these. We don't usually grease felt washers. Okay, then there's another keyed washer and another felt washer. Okay, these are going to go in this order, but before I put them in, I want to clean these felt washers up a little bit. They've got grease in them, and felt washers don't usually get greased, so we're not going to leave those like that. I'm going to oil them and prevents it from. Now, how did I do this? All I did was I set these washers in a pan, and I sprayed them down with some WD-40, and I'm rubbing them back and forth on the pan just to get that grease broken down. Okay, once I've done that, I will just blot them dry with a rag. All right, I've already cleaned out the spool itself. We are going to start off with a felt drag washer. We're going to put it down in there, and we're going to oil it. Next to go in will be a large keyed washer, followed by another felt washer. Oil that one. Now, any excess oil that you put in there is going to squeeze out, so it's not like you're going to have too much trouble with that. Okay, and then goes the eared washer. Make sure that those little tabs go into the slots. Then goes your final felt drag washer. Oil it as well. And we'll put in our final keyed washer. We're going to reinstall the clip. Now, this clip wasn't exactly installed correctly. I like to put them in so that you've got nearly the end of it over here at the slot, so it makes it easier to get them out. Oh yeah, they are. They're in the slot. Okay. All right, now when we put this spool back on, if you just sit it down in place and just kind of rotate it, it's going to drop down as it drops through. It'll line itself up with those keyed washers, and it'll drop into place. Then the final part is going to be this knob. Okay, nice drag. All right, now the handle, I fixed the handle yesterday, and you guys didn't see me do it, but all I had to do was pop this little pin out right here, or cap right here. It pops out. and then there's a screw in there. And I took and unscrewed the screw, and I took and wiped all the old grease off of here and then lubricated it again and put the screw back in. Once I've done that, I put the cap back on. It had grease in there instead of oil, and I don't know why, because there's an oil hole right here for you to be able to oil it. And somebody had popped it apart and put grease in it instead. And the grease had gummed up and hardened. All right, let's go ahead and put this back on. There we go. Instant anti-reverse. We can turn the anti-reverse off. Okay, does the bail flip properly? Yes, it does. Do we have a proper oscillation from our worm gear? Yes, we do. All right. The only thing this reel needs now is I'm going to be pulling the line off of it because that's old line and it needs to be replaced. But that is a really nice reel. It is a Daiwa EMCAST Plus 6000. The schematics are available on it. Parts are not readily available for it. I could not find a bail, which is why we had to effect the bail repair on it yesterday, or day before yesterday. And but it is a nice, very nice, big saltwater reel. And it's going back over to Ken, who will probably either, and I don't know what in the world the story is on this little washer. I could not find it in the schematics anywhere. And so that's enough of that. Earlier in the video, we talked about that washer, and I had searched it out and looked in the schematics for it. Couldn't find it anywhere. Well, if you look right at the very center of this slow motion, you will see that washer pop out from underneath that metal plate when I remove it. It's a shim washer that someone installed under there. It's not in the schematics anywhere, but I went ahead and I put it back in where somebody had put it, because apparently they put it there for a reason. It takes some effort to actually get it installed there. So I wanted you guys to know I didn't just forget about that washer. I went searching for it, went watching the video for the disassembly and watched where it came from, and there you see it. So just wanted you to know. If you like this video, please hit the like button. If you didn't like it, that's okay. Hit the dislike button. I'd appreciate it though if you told me what it was you didn't like. And if you'd like to see further videos like this and you're not currently subscribed, please hit the subscribe button. If you then hit the invitation button or notification button, it will let you know when I post a new video so that you can view it if you're interested. All right, so that's Rick Stivers, is Young Martin's Reels, signing out.